All right, I think it's working. Yeah, so welcome to the strategy section. How many of you guys are planning on staying in this room for most of the day? Cool, sweet. You guys are my type of people. So we're going to go through a few things here. We're going to talk about design and competition strategies. Like I said before, we're going to kind of expand our knowledge base. Where can you pull information from? You know, not just the raw knowledge, but where can you go and look, keep your ear to the ground to try and, you know, learn new things as they come up through the season. Expand our capabilities, get the build season mentality kind of going now. It's a great, you know, starting point to kind of get everyone together, learn a bunch of new stuff, you know, build a quick plan for the next 2 months and try to, you know, get ready, prep yourselves for the build season. And then obviously there's some new people here. How many of you are new? Haven't done an FRC season before? Cool, welcome. And we're going to get you guys up to speed. We're going to talk about robots. I think that's pretty obvious. And then we're going to answer some questions, whatever we need to get through. So sweet. So I'll introduce us. We'll let each of us introduce ourselves. So my name is Brandon Holly. This is my 18th FRC season, going back to 8th grade when I started. This is my 13th season as a mentor in Team 125 here at Northeastern in Boston. I'm a mechanical engineer. I went to school at Northeastern, and I'm currently working as a mechanical engineering leader at Sonos, makes wireless speakers. I also coordinate the Boston local kickoff, so if you guys are going to come to kickoff this year, I'm running that. I run the Revere District event in Boston, so if you guys come to that, you'll see me there. And I'm on the District Championship event committee this year, and I also run Beantown Blitz. So if you have any questions about that stuff, you know, as we go through the course of the day, you know, even after the seminars and stuff, obviously feel free to reach out. I'll let the other guys introduce themselves too.
All right, I'm Bailey Call. This is my 6th FRC season. I started out as a high school student on 195. I spent 3 years there. I was on the drive team. I was the drive coach. Graduated high school, came up to Boston for school, started mentoring 125 in 2016. I'm a strategy and design mentor. I'm a college student at Wentworth Institute of Technology, where I study electromechanical engineering. I'm a mechanical engineering intern at Bex Robotics, and I'm an FTAA at some of the New England district events.
I'm Justin Lumpkin. I'm going into my 3rd season currently. I started the team in 2015. That was my freshman year. I go to high school at Revere High, and I was drive team 2017.
So we're going to get into the meat of the presentation now, start talking about what you guys are all here for, learning how to be competitive and successful. So all starts out with defining what that is. You know, what's success to you? It's different for everyone else. So, you know, each team has their different goals, different focuses that they want to focus on. So as this is all about you guys, we want to give you guys a couple quick minutes, spend some time with your group members, with your team members, generate a couple, you know, ideas about what's your greatest success, what's your greatest accomplishment as a team. So we'll let you guys talk amongst yourselves, give you a couple minutes, and then we'll come back as a group and discuss that.
Student can be a socializing with that. Well, you have your own accomplishments. The team are once. I was part of the 65%. I don't think games are biggest accomplishment.
The major.
I don't know. The role play was pretty good.
It all just sounds like
I think they paid every word up front.
Oh yeah, that was. And that's been the second year. That's pretty good. Let's get it 15.
Thank you. All right, looks like most of us are ready to start talking. Anybody volunteer to, talk about what they think one of their greatest accomplishments as a team was? What you got?
Working well with our alliance to get more points for.
Sweet, super important. Cooperation, working as a team. We have our own team, but every match you're with 2 other teams, so that's super important. Anybody else?
Everyone's gonna have to go, so.
We got a few group discussions, so it may not have to be this one, but you're gonna have to go eventually. What you got?
Everyone on the team has a meaningful job during competition, and they know what their job is, and they're doing it well.
I like that one.
Military precision.
Good call.
Know your job. Anyone?
About Justin.
Justin, what you got?
I mean, I think the team's single greatest accomplishment. I mean, we made it to Einstein's. I think that's pretty dope. Pretty sick.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, the point here is every team's past is different. Every team has a different vision for where they want to get to in the future, but in general, everyone wants to do better than they did before. Very few people are sitting there going, yeah, I feel pretty good about where I am right now. I mean, if you're involved in FIRST Robotics, you kind of have that mentality built into you. You're going to want to try and improve. The point today is that there's different paths to get to those different levels of success, and they're all okay. Not everybody is going to be able to build a robot that's capable of, accomplishing all the game tasks, as good as the other teams in the competition. But you can build a robot that is part of a team, part of an alliance, that really executes a strategy well, that fits a specific need of an alliance, that will be on that winning alliance. And that's the whole point, is that you can be a wide spectrum of robot and be extremely successful. But you got to make smart decisions up front, and that's kind of what we're trying to get to today. So why do we care? Why do we care about doing better on the field? Obviously, there's a personal pride thing involved, but there's actually tangible benefits too. So doing better on the field, I mean, it will enhance team pride. People will feel good about being on the team because they're performing well. It's easier to feel that way if you're successful versus not successful. You can pull new people in. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a team go out and win a regional or a chairman's award or something like that, bring it back to their school, and they get a pep rally invite or something like that, and all of a sudden there's new people exposed to the team that weren't exposed to before. That stuff happens because you did well on the field and off the field. But and then the same thing, the more mentors get involved, you call in more parents. All that stuff is good, and it builds momentum. You show up in the local paper, maybe you get a local news crew to come by, and now all of a sudden you're exposed to new businesses that could potentially attract new sponsors. You have a more rigorous, chairman's case, and that leads to the next season, doing better in that realm. All this stuff can really lead to a better team. So trying to do better on the field is a good way to stay focused, and there's kind of side benefits that come along with, actually doing better on the field. So a big part of this is setting goals, and being very honest, when I hear the word setting goals, my eyes glaze over a little bit. It's like a corporate speak type of thing. But when you're working on a team, it really is critical. The whole point of a team is you guys have a common goal, and you have a common shared interest. If everyone's running a million different directions, you guys aren't going to move very far in one direction. You're going to kind of stay in the same place. You want to make sure that those goals are well aligned as a team, and you want to make sure they're achievable. And it's okay to, stepping stone your way through it. Come up with a 5-year plan, for on the field. Obviously, there's our are off the field, and the mentors in the room know that we have to plan for, expenses and budget and all that stuff. But you can make a plan for how you're going to improve as the season goes on. One of my proudest moments actually is there anyone from 2084 in the room right now? They're supposed to be here today. Like 5 years ago, they started coming to our university day here, and we made some connections with them, and we stayed really close. And over the years, like just from a distance, I mean, it's not like we're talking to them every day. We talk to them a couple times a year. They piece by piece went, from a team that wasn't doing anything on the field, they were having a really hard time, to this past year making it to Einstein, and we competed against them on Einstein. That was awesome for us to see. Like this team went from, realizing that they wanted to be better, they weren't having the success they wanted, and then they kind of just built, and you've seen it over the past several years as they've gotten better and better, and it's pretty awesome. So what we're going to do now is talk through some of these goals, and then you guys are going to just take a minute and talk about what those goals could be for you. They don't need to be crystal clear, but it's just good to talk through where you guys are as a team. So here's just some very rough examples. You could be chosen for Elimination Alliance. So in a district setting, 24 out of the 40 teams at the district event, they're going to make it to eliminations. Totally reasonable goal, being the top 2/3 of the competition. That's totally reasonable. Some teams have the desire to rank into the top 8, be an alliance captain. That brings you up to around the top 20% of teams at an event. And it's not easy. There's a lot of things that need to go right, and there's a lot of planning that needs to be done to get there. Making it to the finals. So 6 out of 40 teams at an event make it to the finals. You're getting to a point where there's some luck involved, but consistently making it to the end of a tournament isn't luck. It's preparation. Actually getting there and winning. Sure, things can break your way one way or the other way, but getting to that end, putting yourself in the position where you have a chance to win, that is not luck. That's preparation and skill. Winning an event, totally reasonable goal. A lot of teams share that goal. It's probably the one we hear the most, and it's definitely something to work toward. But then there's other stuff too, winning a judged award, and you can pick what award you guys want to go after. Chairman's obviously is a huge one people go after, but you can focus on things like winning an Innovation and Control Award. We know teams that are really good at that. They have a really good programming structure, they have a really good methodology, and they say, hey, we want to step in and we want to be a team that is recognized for being control leaders. And then rookie teams have access to specific rookie awards, and you guys can talk about those and focus on those as they come up. So with that, take 5 minutes, not even.
We got another group exercise.
Talk with your teammates that are here. Come up with just one goal right now. One goal that you guys would want to go after. It doesn't need to be, your top goal or whatever, but just talk about it. See where you guys want to be.
Very unique mechanism.
What's up, YouTube viewers? No, not zero viewers. And then after we do one, make it impossible.
District or that's a really high smaller one. I thought we made it to it was very close. There was one game where we should have won. Oh yeah, I feel like remember? Right? Remember how the judges were?
I like it. And like he's.
Let's make our own team answer it. It's our biggest goal.
Let them figure it out.
We got 2 of them.
I'll let them know.
All right, we'll give you guys a minute or two to finish up the discussion.
Good one.
All right. We all get some goals written down, goals, mental notes, etc. Anyone want to volunteer, put out what their team goal is potentially for the coming year? What do you got?
Win an event.
I like it. What you got?
Publicity in our school and community because no one knows we exist.
Sweet.
That's
You guys
real.
should check out the community presentation later. 2:20 afternoon. What do we got?
Win a rookie award.
Nice.
Nice.
Which one?
One of them.
So make sure you go to, someone's at the award seminar later today, so you know which ones are available and which ones, what people are looking for.
All right. So coming with goals.
Hold on.
What do you got?
Rank 15th or higher by the end of the New England district champs.
Cool. Points wise, like
Good one.
overall.
In the district.
Nice.
Sweet. All right, so coming with goals, we're not going to complete every goal. And, coming to accept that is really important. We'll all reach a point where we're going to have failure. We're not going to be able to, fulfill every single task that we want to be able to do. But it's important that we accept that, and it's important that we move on from that. Poor strategic decisions, poor execution, plain old bad luck, it always happens. It's going to happen in every event for, almost every team. You're going to run into, the hardships.
It's a culture thing too. You have to breed the culture on your team, and it's hard to get that momentum going sometimes. But it's okay to fail. You don't want people to not pick up, a couple pieces of metal or wood and put a prototype together because they have an idea, because they feel like it's going to be, laughed at or whatever. That's just like a human reaction that you have to fight through. You want to try to breed this culture where it's okay to screw up. Obviously, there's a limit to that stuff, but when we're talking about how the robot does on the field and what we're trying to do, you can recognize good effort. I think almost anybody has that capability. Recognize someone putting in effort, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. But say, yep, that doesn't work. Let's figure out how to fix it or how we're gonna move past it. So keep that in mind. And so as we go through this stuff, we're going to talk about all sorts of things. So designing for simplicity is a really hard thing to do sometimes, especially with FRC games where day one, you're going to see this really crazy, awesome game animation, and you're going to see, live stream in the field, and everybody is going to be like jacked. It's like you're going to have adrenaline pumping through your system, and you're going to want to go in and take on all these tasks that are presented in front of you. So all you guys remember last year, I'm sure everyone saw, the fuel all over the field and said, oh my God, look at all this fuel. Like, we've got gears and we got to climb. Like, this is going to be awesome. You've got to really think through. And that's what we're going to talk through, both in this seminar and the one after this. We're going to talk through how you navigate those waters and try to make sure that you're choosing a strategy that's going to, A, win, but B, is something that your team's going to be able to nail. So when you're talking about designing for simplicity, you want to talk about off-the-shelf items. So we're talking about things that save you time, things that are reliable, and things that you can easily use to accomplish, a speed reduction or an intake wheel or a drive wheel. There's good options and bad options, and part of what we'll describe are some of the good options and bad options. But it's also just something that your team has to figure out over time. You got to understand what your build style is, what resources you have at your disposal, and kind of go from there and determine how do you guys build an executable robot each year, and build that toolkit up and understand that, well, we liked using these wheels last year. Is there a reason we should go away from them? Aside from it's just a new year. If we understand how they work and we liked how they perform, it's okay to use them again. Stuff like that. And gearboxes are a big part of this because, especially if you rewind the clock 5+ years ago, 10 years ago, if you wanted to take a kit motor and make it move slower, it was pretty much build a custom gearbox. That was all you had to do. And then half the battle, just getting the robot in the field, was building the gearbox and making sure the gearbox worked. And so people, would need access to CNC machines and all sorts of stuff. There's so many options now you can buy off the shelf. Now, obviously, buying off the shelf means that you need the budget to do so. So that's something to work on in the off season, and this is where preparation comes from. If you guys want to be able to go out and buy shifting gearboxes, for instance, you need to be able to, make sure you fundraise, make sure that you're preparing to be able to spend the money on the stuff that you guys want to use. So this is all part of that multi-year plan, and just thinking through, beyond one season and, a couple months.
We're just going to burn through some of the, classic COTS items that are really common for teams to use. First one is the kit bot. My favorite quote about the kit bot is that if you are not 105 to 110% sure that you can build something better than the kit bot, you should be using the kit bot. The kit bot's there. You get it pretty much for free, every team. Honestly, most teams should be using it. It's right there. It's a solid base to build off of. And it's going to save you potentially a week of machining if you're a low resource team to, you can build a kit bot in a couple hours and have a robot driving around, whereas some teams spend weeks just getting something moving.
We host every year after kickoff, the week after kickoff, we host a quick build here at Northeastern. So usually we have 10 to 15 teams every year come. Usually they tend to be newer teams, but we've had better teams come too. But basically, they take a week, they strategize, they prototype, and then they come back the week after kickoff and say, all right, we're going to put our kit bots together. At the end of that meeting, at the end of that Saturday, 1 week in the build season, they're leaving with a drivetrain that's fully put together, wired up, and programmed, and drivable. So if you think about it, especially if people have been through before, that list of 10 or 15 teams probably was way ahead of you at the build season because they just used the kit bot. And that's not a knock on people who don't use the kit bot. We don't either, because we're trying to execute and customize and do things slightly differently. But that's all about knowing what your team is and knowing what you're capable of. So kit bot, definitely consider it, especially if you're not sure if you're going to be able to execute.
Kitbot comes from AndyMark. AndyMark is probably the lead supplier of COTS items to first teams. I'm sure we all know AndyMark from First Choice, from buying game pieces, et cetera, et cetera. AndyMark is known for superbly robust parts. They're born from First. The company started because of First. The leaders of that company know what teams want and how to give it to teams. So great resource. They have a fantastic website full of robot parts ready for you to slap on your robot. Just some quick little items commonly bought from AndyMark: gears, sprockets, hubs and adapters is a big one to interface all these things together. You have a wheel, you got a gear, you got a sprocket, something they got to make together. Hubs and adapters, it can be challenging to turn a very, precise part like that on a lathe yourself. So being able to, drop $6, $7, get a precision machine part like that to make a solid drivetrain is really, really, really important. Maxpro, super, more of a new company, but they are definitely a company of interest for teams. They build really, really high quality parts for an affordable price. Wheels, gearboxes, all the pneumatic components that you could ever need, gears, and my favorite is the Versa line. It's literally a line that you can make almost anything out of with the materials that they hand you. We use the Versa line extensively on our robots. It is almost integral to our build style. So
our question is always like, we will use a COTS, item until we hit a wall, right? So if we're sitting there and we're going, all right, well, we want to build a shooter. We're going to start putting the pieces together, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop using COTS items until we get to some problem that's not solvable with something off the shelf. So when you go back and you look at all of our mechanisms from our robot last year, every single one of them except our drive base was powered on Versa planetaries.
Everybody should know that gearbox and love that gearbox. It's the greatest thing you can put on a robot, hands down.
And there's some trickery to it too. So who's used the Versaplanetary? So some of the teams that have been around for a little bit, you guys understand. But Versaplanetary, it's kind of the silver bullet. You can build a mechanism and say you've done the calculations and you've done some prototyping, but you're not totally sure how it's going to react to the final robot. It's adaptable. You can build the interface in and you can make it go slower, you can make it go faster, you can change the motor route to use something that's more powerful or less likely to stall and all that stuff. So Versaplanetary is kind of this silver bullet that you can put into your designs. And again, it's off the shelf, which means that you're going to have to purchase it. It's not going to come in your kit and everything, but plan for that, budget yourself to have some money to spend on stuff like that as the season goes on. They're amazing. It's something every team should be using.
West Coast Products, they're more of a niche supplier of sorts. They specialize in really, really high quality gearboxes, 2-speed gearboxes, stuff that probably every team isn't going to be using. But if you're a very, very highly competitive team, you're making a lot of custom, drivetrains or custom mechanisms. West Coast Products has a lot of, niche parts that will help you integrate that mechanism into your robot. They basically have built themselves around taking, super complicated, highly competitive parts from highly competitive teams and getting them available to pretty much anybody. They steal CAD from, big California teams. They're a West Coast company. I mean, they have products on their website that are direct copies of teams like 254, 971, et cetera, teams that are winning world championships year after year. And they're practically, handing parts out for a decent price that you can put on your robot too. It's a pretty cool company. Just general COTS tips. Pay attention to your kit of parts vouchers. Your kit of parts every year comes with vouchers that, you get your tote and you have all these products inside your tote. Hands-on products that you get day one. But what a lot of teams skip over is there's a manila envelope that you get too. And in that manila envelope are coupons, vouchers, tons of pieces of paper that, you'll look at, glance over really quick and probably just throw away. That's honestly thousands and thousands of dollars that you're throwing away. It is free parts from companies that are, saying, we'd love to help you out, but we don't know what you want. Tell us what you want and we'll ship it to you right away. Automation Direct, Vex has a voucher in there. There's a lot of stuff in there that, companies want to give you. Utilize that. It's really important. First choice, every team is allocated points from the AndyMark website every year. It's more free stuff that you get. It's a, preferential system as far as, how you receive the parts, how you select the parts. But it is super, super vital that every team utilize this, the vouchers and first choice. It's free stuff. Definitely take advantage. So some big takeaways so far from, this is just a quick general tips idea, and we're going to get into some more specifics into, competition season and et cetera. But these are some, quick run-throughs of what we've talked about so far. So we want to celebrate our failures. It's going to happen. Take it, run with it, build on failure. It's only up from there. So if you can take a failure and build upon it, break it down. Why did this fail? Jump to fixing a failure. That's super important. Understanding your team's limits. We briefly talked about that with building goals. But every team is going to be different. Every team is going to have their different limitations. And once you sit down, you generate, all right, this is where we know what our team can get to. That's super important because you can't just be, running, building whatever you want, low resource team trying to do everything. It's hard to do that. You got to, generate a list of constraints that your team has to adhere to. Making design sacrifices jumps right back into that. It's better to be great at one thing than okay at 3 things. If you focus on one great thing, prime example of this past year's game, is, there are teams that they saw all these tasks, but they saw the gears. And, you see the gears, you see big points. They're going to focus on that one thing. And if you do gears great, there are teams that, come elimination time or come towards the end of the year that were getting 4 rotors every single match. It's super, super important. They're the ones that are getting picked. They're the ones that are, your first round picks across the board, and they didn't even touch the balls. It's crazy. They completely ignored one aspect of the game, and they are arguably one of the most successful groups of robots this past year. There's no perfect robot, but there is, a close to perfect partner for almost everybody. Build a pick list, generate strategies, knowing that you're going to have 2 other teams that'll help you complete every single match. It's super important that you look at, all right, I know I'm not going to be able to do everything. How do I push something off onto my teammate? And how do I trust them to get them to complete the task that they have to complete? And how do we come together, work as a 3-team alliance? How many times every competition to win matches? So we're going to jump into, now we're past build season. We are past what Brandon's going to talk about in the next presentation. How do we stay competitive from putting our robot in a trash bag and letting it sit over in the corner for a couple weeks into walking into an event and winning? It's a very, very hard process, and there are a lot of common misconceptions with it. Just a couple quick ones. You need a practice bot to be competitive? Absolutely not. You need to have an amazing robot to be competitive. I already touched upon that a little bit. Absolutely not. And you need to meet every day to be competitive between competition and bag day, or between bag day and competition? Absolutely not. Reality sets in. You need to prepare. You need to know your robot, and you need to meet smart. You need to prepare. I'll touch upon that in the next slide. But these are just super important, quick little tidbits of ideas. You just need to think about what you're doing before you just go start acting on it. Preparing for a competition, there's a lot of things that you can do between this. We're going to assume that you don't have a practice bot. The robot you have is in a trash bag over in the corner, but you want to do something. If you have a practice bot, you're in luck. Drivers can practice, drive around, find a team at the practice field. Cool.
Did anybody build a practice bot? How'd it go?
Cool.
Nice.
Sweet. So we're talking to most of you guys now. You didn't build a practice bot. You're struggling between the potentially a month that you don't get to touch your robot. Other teams do. You have a little bit of unbag time potentially, but you want to do something. There's a list of things that is super, super important that I really think every team should be doing, all during competition season, not just before your competitions. First one, watch other events. It's super important. You can't walk into a football game as a quarterback and say, all right, I'm going against this defense. I've never seen him play football before. NFL quarterbacks spend how long before every NFL game every Sunday watching their opponents play? If you watch these other teams play, you're going to learn how the game works. You're going to learn strategies. You're going to learn, okay, if I play this team, week 3, week 4, where are their weaknesses? Maybe I see this team in the finals. How do I beat this team? You start, even just watching matches, you're going to look at, okay, that team did something really, really cool. How do I make my robot do the same thing? And you also look at, if you see another team's mechanism, we all have unbag time in districts. If you see something cool in another robot, in a week 1 competition, you don't have a competition until week 3. It's, a time that you could be spending stealing an idea. Making a playbook. The last game that I think this is really applicable to would be 2014. I don't think any of you guys would have been around for that one, maybe mentors. But, that was a game where you had a match of a series of very, sophisticated, but almost easy plays that you could, make out. There were a lot of ways to execute the very simple task, and there was a lot of defense that year. There were a lot of strategies come towards the end of the year that you could tell just looking at matches that the team spent, their entire lunch break making a very sophisticated plan about how they were going to move during every second of the match. It was orchestrated to a T in some points during 2014. You know, if you guys can't drive your robot, sit down in front of a whiteboard, sketch out a field, you know, use X's and O's, magnets, something. You know, move your robots around. You know, use your hands. Or human games. Super cool. If you guys just go to the high school gym, get some cones or something like that, mark out a field. Use your team members as a game. You know, just run around, use your game pieces that you have, and it's a makeshift game that you have moving instead of just sitting around talking. You know, that's really how you start understanding the game, is once you actually start to play it. A few other things here, team building. You know, if you're spending a month not talking to your drive team members and you walk into a competition together, you're going to be hard pressed to think that you're going to be competitive. You can't stand next to a team member for 2.5 minutes every match and don't know how to talk to each other. You don't know how to communicate. You can't turn around to your coach and say, I haven't talked to you in a month, bro. What's up? Oh, we got to win a match. It's not going to happen. You have to be able to spend time together. And that comes into, you know, meeting smart, which is what we'll talk about here in a second.
How many people watched a match live online that wasn't their team's match? All right, it's like maybe half of you. So I know, like, people on our team in general, I mean, if we're not at a competition, we're watching a competition. And maybe it's obsessive, and in some ways it definitely is. But really what you're doing is you're just like building this subconscious database of things you've seen happen on the field. And I'm sure you guys have all seen, oh, we saw, you know, some team do this thing, you know, in a match or whatever, and everyone wants to see it. So you find the YouTube link and you share it with each other. So that's just the nature, but that's real knowledge, you know, gaining. Like you're sharing knowledge among your teammates, and you're building this collective like subconscious that your team has now. So when you say, hey, remember, you know, when we saw this, or remember we saw that, or when the team goes out, when our team goes out and executes this new strategy we haven't seen before, everyone understands where that's coming from. It's not coming out of left field. You just have this like, you know, tribal knowledge that you're building, and it's super powerful. And that goes, you know, again, year to year as well. It's not just 1 year. You know, you maybe have worked with other teams before, and you've seen how those teams work with other teams that you've worked with, and all of a sudden you have this kind of encyclopedic knowledge of people in your area and how people play together. And that's super important. So, yes.
Do you watch them on Blue Alliance?
Yes.
Yep.
My most visited website on my laptop between March and April is Blue Alliance.
In New England, we have Twitch, and the links are posted, you know, on the Blue Alliance, but it's streaming on Twitch. And I'm sure as time goes on, it seems like Twitch is going to end up becoming kind of our de facto streaming standard. Yeah, first headquarters uses it now. Championship was streamed there. So.
But I do recommend the Blue Alliance because it's super cool to watch like 6 events at once. I like will sit in class during lectures. Don't recommend doing this, but I sit in class and watch matches sometimes. Don't do that.
And they recorded so you can watch it later.
Some people do. A lot of events nowadays are doing automatic archiving. So there's a lot of events running just programs during the matches that are splitting up match videos and are getting uploaded immediately after the match is over. So there are a lot of events doing that where you can just go right on YouTube. There's a lot of different channels. And the Blue Alliance is a great resource for this too, because their API automatically tracks this. And for a lot of events, they'll automatically upload links to the Blue Alliance where you match will be over 5 minutes later. You can click and watch a YouTube video from it.
Does anyone know what the Blue Alliance is? Does anyone not know what it is?
Right. Blue Alliance is a website. It's thebluealliance.com. It is basically a hub for all of the live streams and videos from all the events across the world. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's got matches literally dating back to 1995 on it. So
it stores the history too of every event that's happened. So you can look up a team, you can look up an event, you know, years ago and find out how they did, who won the event, and then, you know, if you're lucky, it was recorded and archived somewhere. So
it's like a virtual sports almanac first. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you get really into first, it's going to be a black hole of a website. So just
kid you not, it is literally my most visited website between March and April, and I do a lot of schoolwork. So knowing your robot. This is super important, and it kind of strays away from what we've been talking about a lot, but I want to talk about this because it's, like I said, it's very important. You know, your pit crew can make or break an event just as easily as your drive team can. Just some tips to teams that want to be competitive. Make a pre-match checklist. You can spend this. I recommend actually doing this during your unbag time. Making a pre-match checklist, getting to know your robot is super important. Your pit crew has to make sure that your drive team is going to every single match with a competitive robot, and they can't be competitive without that competitive robot. So your pit crew has to know every in and out of your robot, every risky mechanism, every mechanism that, okay, if I go into this match, this might break, but how do I fix it? Staying organized. This is super important. Walking into an event, I'm sure a lot of you guys walk into an event and you see the cafeteria or the gym or the area where all the pits are, and it can be utter chaos. And especially at certain aspects of the competition, come lunchtime on eliminations day, you can't even walk in the area sometimes. So staying organized is super important here. Come finals time, you got a 5-minute timeout between finals match 1 and finals match 2. You got to replace it versus planetary, and you can't find your 7-to-1 stage. Kind of screwed. So if you have an extremely organized pit layout, you can turn to Justin. Justin, where's the 7/16 Allen wrench? And if he can turn around and grab that within 30 seconds, that is an organized pit. He doesn't have to fumble through all of his toolboxes. Plan the pit layout. Make sure all of your team members in the pit can turn around and say, all right, I know where this part is. I know where this part is. Every single tool, that's what's going to start you getting to be a super organized team. If your pit crew can hand your drive team a competitive robot every single match, it's one less variable that you're going to run into come to finals, where your robot is less likely to break down if you're running preventative maintenance checks on it, running your pre-match checklist to make sure your robot is functioning 110% correctly every single match.
It's a point of pride too. So, this is us being totally honest. If we go and we're trying to scout another team, we walk into their pit and it's just a chaotic mess. That's kind of a red flag. Like, are these guys going to be able to make it through an elimination tournament with us? And if there's a breakdown, which happens, every robot breaks at some point in time. But the teams that do well are the ones that just know how to fix it, just execute the fix, and then move on to the next thing. If it turns into this crazy whirlwind thing, and it's just a chaotic scene, it's going to be harder to get it done. I'm not saying that's the top thing we're looking for, but there's a lot that goes into a choice for an alliance member, and that's definitely part of the puzzle for a lot of teams.
So now we're going to jump into match strategy. So we're at our competition, unbagging our robot, getting ready to start matches. How do I win matches? We talked about it earlier, why strategy is important. Strategy is your key to success. If you got these goals, you want to reach the success, you got to have a path to get there. You got to know, it's not just going to happen automatically. So you have to be able to have this plan ready to get to the success. And a super important rule of thumb, personally, that I have is a good strategy and a mediocre robot is going to beat a great robot with a mediocre strategy every single time. Every single time. You can have the best robot in the world, and you don't go into a match knowing how you're going to work that match. You just, the drivers walk up to the sticks. All right, I'm going to drive over here, pick up that gear, and then drive all the way across the field and come back and forth and back and forth. And they just don't have a plan, and they, misuse their time, are not efficient. And you then have a robot over, on the other side, just playing with their gears, running their gear cycles, and just, moseying along. Great robot might be flashy. They might be shooting their balls. They might be, going crazy on the field and look cool. But then all of a sudden, this mediocre robot with a good strategy throws 4 rotors up on the board, and this great robot can't beat that.
There's a great example of this stuff. So last year, I'll use Morpheus as an example because we noticed this about you guys as the season went on. So you guys were a great gear runner, right? You guys ran gears amazingly. And one of the key aspects that we looked for, especially as the strategy of the season played out and went on, was after a team gets to, say, 3 rotors and there's 30 seconds left, 45 seconds left, do they keep scoring gears? If they keep scoring gears, that's like It's great. You scored another 2-3 gears. That's great.
But you got to score 6, and you can't.
But you need 6 more for you to get the points. There was no point in continuing to score gears. You didn't have a chance at it. So the smart teams were the ones that said, we got 3 rotors. We don't have enough time for 4. We're going to stop. We're going to play defense. And the teams that do that, believe me, people watch and they pick up on that stuff. And usually teams that are doing that are going to find their way into the top 8 anyway. So it's not a matter of getting picked or not. It's just little things like that. And that's just a team that's playing smart. And I mean, we'll take the team that plays smart, every time.
And building upon that, quick little comparison, a good strategy paired with a good robot, they don't have to be great, either of them. That's your key to winning an event. If you can walk into an event with, a robot that you think is going to do well compared to, the vast other teams at your event, and you have a good plan going into it, you're steps ahead of almost every other team in that event. So we have this idea, this dream of a strategy that's going to win us to an event. How do we start? This strategy is, we know we need it, but what is it? So we talked about it before. You have to evaluate yourself. You have to know your limits. You have to know your robot. You have to know, okay, this is what my robot is capable of. What does this capable robot have to do to win a match? And super, super, super important. And I can't emphasize this enough. It happens every single year where we have, a pit scouter walk up to a team, or a team just talking pre-match that says, I'm going to score 6 or 7 gears this match. And it's hard to look at this team with the we have our scouting data that says they can only score 3, and this team's walking around saying they can score 6 or 7. That's not a good strategy, because you're putting yourself and your teammates at a disadvantage going into a match where you have this so-called strategy that you want to score 6 or 7 gears, and going into it, it's not going to happen. So if you come to terms with yourself, your limits, and you say, I'm going to score 3, great match, 4 gears. Cool. Be honest with your team members about that, because that can change your strategy from, if I can score 6 gears, I'm going to reach for that 4 rotors. But if I can only score 3 or 4, I'm honest with my team members about it. I know going into the match, all right, I don't think we have a 4 rotor alliance, but we have a 3 in defense alliance. And if you can put those 3 rotors up and transition to that defense like we talked about before, that's a good strategy. And you only get there because you were honest with yourself. You were honest with yourself that, okay, I know my robot has a limit, and I'm going to take advantage of that limit to develop that good strategy. Come prepared. We talked about it before. We have our drive practice. We have our other events, and we have our playbook or planned ideas. And we have a dedicated team. This is super important. As we look at that sub-bullet point, you have to be able to work together overall as a team. We talked about it before at the pit group, but there's so many things on a team that come together to build this success. We have a scouting team that's watching our other teams. That scouting team is working with a strategy team, or maybe just a drive coach, to develop this strategy before every event. And this drive coach is transitioning the strategy over to the drive team. And then this drive team and coach are then going back to your pit crew and saying, this is what happened during our match. This is where our failures occurred. I'm worried about this aspect. They get the robot back, and it's this giant cycle of teams, sub-teams working together. And if you have a singular fault in that chain of events, you're going to break down extremely, extremely quick. And if you don't fix it, it's just going to be an exponential decay. I'll let Brandon handle this one. He does this a lot more than I do now, unfortunately. I miss it a lot. But pre-match strategy.
So as you guys, there's important things. And not every team can do this right out of the gate, but you really want to divide your team up so that you can execute all these important things at the same time. Everything we've said has been important, right? So it's like, well, if everything's important, how do we determine what we're going to focus on? You want to have, in an ideal situation, a drive team that's separate from your pit team, that's separate from your award presenters, that's separate from your scouting team, and separate from your strategy team. The reason for that is that everyone can get really, really good at their job, and being a team and trusting that everyone's working together and doing their job well, you can actually become better than you would be, having multiple, or one person do multiple jobs. So in that sense, what we do is send out a strategy team that goes and pre-scouts the match for us. So I'm the drive coach for our team. So I'll sit there and let our strategy team go work out what the coming matches are going to look like. And they're working on it before we even get to the event sometimes. When we went to a championship this past year, you had your match schedule a week plus in advance. We were scouting those matches for over a week. We knew exactly what we were walking into in every single one of our matches. We had watched videos of almost every team that we were playing with and against, and that stuff pays off. So our strategy team will go out and they'll try and find the strategy team of our partners and and pull us all together. They'll come up with a strategy they think will win, and we'll talk about it before the match. They'll run it past me. They'll run it past the drive team. And we'll all decide that, yes, this seems like the strategy we need to go advocate for, and then we'll go discuss that with our partners. And obviously, we need all of our partners to get on page at the same time. And it's not always the case where we'll pick a strategy and then we go to our partners and that's the strategy we use. Very frequently, we'll have to change what the strategy is based on what our partners think they can do. Maybe our partner that we were counting on being able to do whatever task their climber broke, and now we have to change our strategy. We can't rely on that 50-point climb that they had been having every match. So it's just stuff that you have to be reactive and flexible on. You want to discuss the strategy in your team with the drivers, with the coach, with your scouts, and make sure that you have all the data at your disposal. We use a web-based scouting app, and they'll talk about it in our scouting seminar later today. But that's really helpful for us because on the fly, we can pull up scouting data about teams as we're talking to our partners, as we're talking about our opponents, and we can come up with a strategy based on what we're hearing and seeing from our partners, and we can use real data as it's being collected to help inform that decision. That's a really, really powerful tool. If you guys have ever been in an alliance discussion, I'll start with this way. Who's been in an alliance discussion that hasn't necessarily gone super smooth? People wanted different things. People, had different ideas for how the match should play out. Anybody? Yeah, it happens.
It's all the time.
Happens all the time. That's
It's easy
okay.
to spot too.
Yeah, it is. And it's okay. It's you don't want to let that defeat you. But I'll tell you, one of the most powerful tools we have when we go in and we talk about that stuff is data. So when we come back and someone says, no, the other team is going to throw rotors, definitely. All three of those teams are amazing. And we come back with the data that says that they only score each 2 to 3 gears per match. They don't have a chance at doing a 4-rotor. That's really powerful data. And it really influences the discussion. So again, it goes back to your scouting team, your strategy team coming up with a good plan, and being able to relay that information to your partners so that you can actually formulate a strategy you think will win. Yeah?
How far before the match do you start talking to your partners or alliance members? Like if you get the schedule that day,
Yep.
so you can't really necessarily do the pre-online,
Right.
Yep.
doing for them. But do you go to their pit and have your strategy team go to their pit and talk to
So
them?
we'll usually
Or
start.
just wait until you're all lined up.
We'll lurk in the distance for a while. We'll see how, as things are going, our scouting team is looking, or scouting and strategy team are looking several matches ahead of ours. Like not in the schedule, like 3 matches ahead of what our match will be. So they're looking at that and keeping an eye on things. And there'll be things that come up pretty frequently, like, hey, just so you know, I keep using Morpheus as an example, but hey, Morpheus didn't hit their climb last match. Maybe just ask them.
That hurts, man.
I know you guys can take it. That's why I'm they didn't hit their climb. Can you just find out what happened, or whatever? And then we'll go talk to them. And it's like, oh yeah, we were trying to get the 4th rotor, and that
We didn't flip our ratchet around.
Yeah.
So you're saying the scouting tells strategy that, and strategy goes and talks to.
Right. So the scouting team and the strategy team work very, very close together during events. So our scouting team, first thing they do when they walk into an event is they start pit scouting. They have, a list of things they want to look for, a list of things that we know going to alliance selection. Say we're a captain, we already know going into an event what we think our ideal alliance is going to be. So we send our pit scouting team to start, generating the list of these robots. But at the same time, they're looking at our match schedule, and they're saying, okay, we have a match against this robot. We have a match with this team, or something like that. And these pit scouters are already gathering data about this robot, so that we can go into our pre-match strategy as a team before we go talk to this team and say, hey man, this team's wiring job, it's not looking good. We got to be careful with them.
And all of our partners and opponents are circled on the schedule for the scouts, right? So as they're scouting information, obviously we're looking at and watching all teams, but we're really trying to look and make sure that we understand what our partners and opponents are doing as we're leading up to each match.
So we have that first, gathering of data. And then we talked about, okay, this team is now going to start going out for the pre-match discussions where they actually have a discussion with this team as an alliance partner. So they'll go out, like Brandon said, 2 or 3 matches before every time, and usually send 1 or 2 students. Doesn't have to be on the drive team. A lot of times it's one of our lead scouts that are, watching every match. And these are the kids that see these robots compete. They see, the capabilities of these robots, and honestly, they're going to know these robots better than the drive team will. So they go to the teams and they just generate a conversation. Hey, how's your day going? How have your matches been going? Anything go wrong? We just want to, gather some information. We have a match with you later in the day. You got to, just build it's almost like building a friendship right away. So you go into this match, you don't just walk into the queue line and you no idea who you're standing next to. You walk into the queue line and you may not have already talked to them, but, somebody on the team has had a conversation with somebody on the team, and it gets relayed around that, sometimes we walk into a queuing line and the drive team walks in, you know the strategy, and both teams will say yes, and all they have to do is say, go through a quick rundown, and it's 30 seconds and they're already on the same page. So, we have this, it's like a 3-layer system of, building this pre-match strategy where we have our pre-scouters, they're gathering our data to build a conversation with the team before we, generate the strategy as a strategy team as a whole. And then we go to our match, and in the queuing line, we do a full strategy run through with the drive team. Honestly, Brandon doesn't even know the strategy a lot of points. The strategy's been fully developed, and he doesn't learn it until he walks right into the queue line sometimes. And, he gets this, and he walks into the queue line, and he becomes almost a mediator of sorts. And he walks in, and he takes a step back, and he says, all right, is this our best idea? And brings the drive teams together and makes sure every single drive team is on the same page before he walks into the match. He becomes sort of a last final check of sorts. And that's super important because we have all of these, steps to the tiered process, and it sounds super complicated. Once you get the flow, it actually works out really well. And he is the final say all, do all, end all of the match strategy. Go ahead.
And about how many students do you have at the competition? So these are a lot of things to cover.
Yeah, it depends on the competition.
Yeah, it's usually 40 students or so. And it goes higher sometimes, it goes less sometimes. We've had competitions like last year, when we went up to Maine, we only had, I think, 10 total people. Not even students and mentors, it was 10 total people. So that was like kind of a learning.
Where we may be curious.
Yeah, and we had to adapt our, kind of daily, flow to obviously work in those confines. But that's a big part too, like Bailey mentioned before about the playbook. You don't need to have necessarily a written down formal playbook, but what your robot does. You're the experts of your robot. You know how you will fit into an alliance that will be successful, and just having those strategies, totally dialed and at the ready. When you go and you discuss with people, it doesn't need to be a huge activity, especially as you get later in the season and everything, and people really start to learn the game. It becomes a lot easier to execute match strategy. Early in the season, you should definitely be prepared for having to really carry a discussion. Really have to explain pieces of the game that are kind of fundamental and people maybe should know already, but you're going to have to do that if you want to win the match. You're going to have to explain to people that, no, don't keep scoring gears. We're only going to get 3 rotors this match. Just make sure you climb. Take 30 seconds to climb. Just make sure you climb because that's how we're going to win. You have to explain that to people and why that happens. So, and like I said, it's kind of something to build on and grow for. Not every team is going to be able to have 40 people running around executing this stuff, but you can do it with less people, absolutely. And like I said before, you don't necessarily need to have all these functions separated. And for a long time on our team, they weren't separated because we didn't have the people to support them. But you want to make sure that people are putting the right amount of attention on each piece as you go through.
keep going.
Yeah, so like Bailey said, we've executed we've discussed what the strategy is going to be. We've aligned with our teams, and now we're getting ready to go on the field. As you get onto the field, there's a lot of things you want to be doing. Obviously, you want to be getting your robot set up and all of that stuff. But get to a point where every person on your drive team is doing something to help the alliance get prepared for a match. So there needs to be 2 people that brings the robot on the field. That's all you need, 2 people. Those people should know how to turn the robot on, how to fix any little, doodad things that might come up on the field, know exactly how it should be set up, know how to, if you need to set an auto on the robot or something like that, make sure that's set up. Those people need to know how to do all that. It's a very specialized position, but those people can handle it. Let them do that.
And it needs to be the same 2 people every single match. You're not going to develop a consistency, and you're not going to develop a good plan per se if it's not the same 2 people before every match.
That's all part of that flow. Just getting into that. When you're executing and you're in this rhythm, you're able to execute more consistently each time, and it just feels better, and it's less of a burden to like get over that hump each time. So you have 2 people bring the robot on the field. This is going to sound like trivial and everything, but believe me, I judge teams based on this. I probably shouldn't, but I do. Like, if you leave your cart at the entrance to the field, people take the robot on, and you leave your cart sitting there and it's blocking everything. Like, the 3rd person should be moving the cart and bringing it to the cue box. Like, that is part of the well-oiled machine that I'm talking about.
And that 4th person, by the time all 3 of you guys get back to your driver's station, they already have it plugged in.
Yep.
It's ready to go.
Yeah, so the 4th person's got the driver's station set up, and they know everything about the driver's station. If Windows Update decides that it's time to Windows Update, like, they know what to do.
Shoot, I didn't set a static IP. How do I do a static IP?
Yep. Stuff like that. So so you have those people set up, and then this past year there was 5 people. There's 5 people this past year. So we took advantage of that, and we would send the 5th person around basically to make sure that the alliance partners, on our team, we're not getting in their face and doing anything, but we're just watching from distance, saying, hey, like, make sure you grab that gear. Hey, did you want to do this? Just like trying to make sure that we're not missing anything super critical. And then even before the match starts, this is something I do that I just feel better at night, sleeping. I don't leave the field until the robot is fully connected to the field and ready to go for the match. When my operator tells me, nope, we're good, I have everything set up, then I will exit the field. They're not going to start the match with you on the field. And robots don't connect sometimes. And it's a lot easier to stay on the field than it is to get back onto the field if there's a problem. So that's just, kind of a little thing that we do just to make sure that we're maximizing our chances on the field each time.
And your volunteers may get mad at you, but coming as an FTAA, I can't start the match until I have green lights all the way down the board. So you can have volunteers say, you got to get off the field, you got to get off the field. But as long as you tell them my robot is not ready, my robot is not connected, they really have nothing they can say
It's
back.
not being, you're not trying to give people a hard time. You're really just trying to make sure that your robot functions in a match. And that's a totally fair thing to expect each match. So the match goes, and you get started. You got to remember, especially as like a drive coach, you need to be aware of what's going on everywhere, and that's basically an impossible thing to do. But that's the job. The driver and the operator should run the robot. They should know what your strategy is. They should know what you guys are doing, and they should also be able to understand like one-word like commands that could completely 180 shift that strategy without thinking about it. And that's where like really well-oiled, really tight-knit drive teams excel. Is, hey, something happened. I'm the drive coach. I saw something happen. Our drivers don't know what's going on. And I give them one quick sentence or one simple command, and they understand instantly what has happened on the other side of the field, and they know they now need to go do something different and change the strategy. So know what those types of phrases are, what your robot's capable of, and then be prepared to swap as the match goes on. And obviously the stay calm thing kind of goes without saying, but that just takes, it's a muscle you have to exercise. You have to work on staying calm, not shouting. People who are screaming at each other in the drive box, you've lost the battle at that point in time. Like if you're not communicating clearly to each other anymore, you've lost. So keep that in the back of your mind. at all points. And then after the match, it's important to talk about what just happened. And you can do that in a number of different ways. So a lot of teams, a lot of really good teams are recording the match the whole time. And they're recording their robot in the match because they want to give feedback right back to the drivers and operators about how things happen in the match. It's like a baseball player going back and watching, the pitcher and what he just threw, watching his swing. You're using the video, you're using the replay to get better, make your team better. There's also things that'll happen, and we'll talk as soon as the match ends. The buzzer sounds. We'll take 10 seconds sometimes and just explain what happened, at the end of the match, so it's fresh in our mind and everyone understands what we just, went through. And then obviously that all ties into just looking at how to get better and improve. This other stuff, this is real, and especially going through an entire, a championship this past year. We started, I think, a line selection at 6:45 or something like that in the morning.
Right.
It was something crazy like that, or that was a.
It was like a 7:30 start, but we were in the arena by 6:30.
So we're in the arena at 6:30 in the morning. We are up scouting until 3 o'clock in the morning. So everyone has basically no sleep. Everyone's running on Red Bull and
A lot of Red Bull.
pizza. It's a very unhealthy environment.
Maybe some Snickers.
Yeah, maybe a Snickers or two or something. It does. So you go through that. You go through your line selection, really, nerve-wracking, high-tension thing. Then you're in a line selection. You're out on the field. You're getting ready for the match. You have your pit set up. All the nerves are building up. All that stuff will happen. And then as the day goes on and you're going through match after match after match, you're not thinking about staying healthy. You're running on pure adrenaline. And I mean we've had people on our team pass out.
Where's Peter Ha?
He threw up.
Peter Ha, come to Vision Elims in St. Louis this year, decided that, what was it, 5 seconds before the match started?
Yeah, they were in the 3-2-1 thing.
Doing the 3-2-1.
Yeah.
He just
Turned around to Brandon and said, Brandon, I really don't feel good. Ran away. So
And I think that was a nerves thing more than anything, if you were to ask me. I don't think there was a random stomach bug that popped up and then disappeared. But the point is,
stuff happens, it's preventable.
It is, and it's really important to stay healthy. And there's things that the rest of your team can be doing for the drive team. I can't tell you how awesome it is. As we're going through, especially a semifinal or something where it's back-to-back matches and robot breaks and we're fixing it, to have people just bring up water and say, guys, just have a drink. And it just, aside from just being hydrated, just takes, you take 30 seconds and you're just okay, back to where we are. And that's how you stay focused and stay clear as you're going through. So take advantage of those little breaks. Take advantage of your teammates helping you out. We had when we were on Einstein this year, we hadn't eaten all day. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and someone brought this huge tray of chicken fingers down to us, and it was the best thing ever.
I've never seen.
It was beautiful.
Justin likes food. I've never seen him swarm to food so fast.
Oh, it was so good. I didn't even think the chicken was that good when I was not hungry, but then, oh god.
All right, go ahead, bud.
Yeah.
No, so do you have just a team member with their phone videoing? Do you?
Yeah, people,
Yeah.
phones, iPads. We have a team camera that we'll use,
Did you set that up, on a stand up on the stand? Do they just have someone
So
operating it?
we'll
or-
do that. A lot of times, a lot of events allow teams media badges. So we'll have 1 or 2 people getting multiple angles field side. So, this year especially, for example, with we shot the wiffle balls in autonomous. So we had a person stationed directly next to the hopper getting a videotape of how our robot moved in autonomous, so that, we could give direct feedback to the programmers after every single match and say, hey man, autonomous drove too far, we got to dial it back a little bit. And that we wouldn't really find that if we were just, going off by eye every match. And then you have one person, sometimes in the stands, sometimes by the field, just literally following the robot up and down the field, tracking every movement. And, super important to, throw this video right on a laptop or a monitor in the pit, and you get your drive team and 1, maybe 2 other people, and you just sit there and you talk about it. And usually it's led by the 2 people that are not on the drive team, because these are the 2 people that, watch the robot very, very intently. Brandon, as the coach, doesn't, as important as he is during the match, he actually doesn't get to watch every single, thing the robot does. He's watching alliance partners, he's watching opponents. We have 2 people in the stands that are watching and critiquing every single little thing our personal robot is doing. We're scouting our own robot every single time. We take this video right back to the pit, and we honestly almost tear into our drive team at some points. It's you got to be constructively criticizing and constructively critiquing every single idea or every single strategy or every single brand. Why'd you make the strategy change? It's you got to when you talk about it and say we lose a match based on a decision, and it's not like we want to walk down and place the blame on the loss, but we also want to look at, okay, Brandon, why did you make this decision? What led to this? How can we maybe make the same decision, but how do we make that same decision turn into a win? Or why this decision didn't work, and how do we make looking at this match, rewinding, watch through, what is the right decision to make? And that's it can get super heated sometimes, but it's important to have these conversations. And if you have to take a 30-second break, vent. Someone's got to take a walk. Let them take a walk, but they got to come back and they got to be able to take this criticism and say, how do I take this failure that we just had, accept it, and move on, build from the failure, and get a win next match.
It's helpful beyond strategy too. Like the robot will do weird things sometimes, and maybe you went to put a gear on, and for whatever reason, the gear got stuck in your robot, and you don't know exactly what happened, and then you went and got another gear, and that one went on fine, and it's what happened with that one gear? Remember that one gear, you couldn't get it on, what happened? If you didn't record it, then it's I don't know. Yeah, so that'll help, kind of the continuous improvement side of things too. Sometimes the gear just can get caught ever so slightly in our gear intake, and
File this down.
we can file this down or fix this or whatever. So it helps beyond just strategy stuff. It can help the robot get better too.
All right, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I guess speaking of the camera recording actions that the robot does, do you know if there's any way to record the camera that your robot has during the match?
There's video recording. People use it for recording gaming and tutorials and stuff on a computer. You can download one of those apps, and I've seen people use that before, just so that they can go back and look at it again.
I know for sure it is possible. Don't know how to do it, so can't really help you. But I know it's possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's not something that we've done, but I'm sure mentioning it now, we'll think about doing that.
195 used to do it, and I think they still do it, so I'm pretty sure it's possible. All right, so just some general takeaways from the entire presentation, the pre-post-match strategies, etc. We've probably repeating ourselves a couple too many times now, but it's good to pound it in. We want to set these goals, and we want to be honest with ourselves. Can't really say that enough. We want to establish this growth plan, this strategy, this these set of goals, this staircase. I really liked that graphic we had, that earlier setting goals, stepping up that staircase, building up to that final goal. And there's one staircase about repeating that, and going up and down these stairs is the only way you're going to keep growing. Simplify your approach wherever possible. Use these COTS parts. Focus on one aspect of the game rather than 3. Make sure you're really good at that one aspect instead of being okay to good at these 3. Use your COTS items, and sometimes it may be really hard to sit down and say, I don't want to touch that aspect of the game. And you really want to build this competitive robot that does every single thing. Sometimes that easy approach may require the most cojones, but that easy approach that you just sacrificed and took a while to actually accept that this is the competitive way you want to go. Again, looking back at 2017, if you focused only on gears, you had one of the most competitive robots out there if you were really good at it. So now we're going to get into some case studies of robots Brandon and I selected that, looking back over the course of the years, really got this idea of building a strategy, building a plan, and executing it extremely well. So these are some 3 of them. This is my favorite FRC robot of all time, probably up there for Brandon as well. I think this robot personally executed strategy better than any other robot that's ever been built. 11/14, 2008, super young team out of Canada, walked in, surprised the entire world, and won the world championship. They had a really ugly robot that, didn't look like it should do everything that it did, but, in that game that year, they had the best autonomous, they had one of the best teleop routines, and they probably had the best driver in the world. And these 3 things, because they practiced with a good driver, they developed a really good off-the-field autonomous programming, and they just knew how to play the game. It led them to, go to the next slide, Justin. Next slide. It led them to all of this success. They won almost every single event that they went to as the first seed. They stomped world championships. It was unfair at points that this alliance that they built was unbelievable. Go back for me a second. So how they got to this point, these are just some quick bullet points that we talked about during our presentation that they took with it and they ran with it. They use minimal custom parts. You look at that robot, you see they do have these, machined aluminum, et cetera, but we see this, yellow pneumatic tubing hanging off the robot. They got that from a COT supplier. You see the wheels they have in the front of the robot. They got that at a COT supplier. Their entire drivetrain, it might be a custom drivetrain, but every single component inside that drivetrain, mostly COTS components. They take all these parts, so they don't have to custom machine it. They just put them together. They focused on reliability and simplicity. They had maybe 3 things on this robot that were moving. They have their drivetrain, they have their arm joint, and then they have the piston that shoots out. So 4 things, the intake roller. Super simple robot, but it just worked. And I kid you not, I haven't personally seen this robot in person. I've seen pictures of it. It was ugly. Did not look good, but it looked good winning. So next one. 43-34. This was a team in 2012. So both of these robots are probably before your time. I won't go too much into 2008 because I didn't compete in 2008, so I didn't know it too well. You did, but 2012 was a game where you had to pick up the basketballs and score them in a hoop. Sounds super simple. Shooting a foam basketball, similar to 2016, into a goal sounds so easy, but it's not. So this team decides they're a rookie team. They are super low resource out of Alberta, Canada, so kind of in the middle of nowhere. So they look at it and they're like, all right, let's build simple. Let's just be the ideal partner, to a really, really highly competitive team. So they look at, their strategy and they say, we're not going to be able to score goals. We're not going to be able to score all these points, but how do we help somebody else score the points? Next slide. So they built this really wide profile robot that allowed them to fit on this bridge super well. That bridge was the end game in 2012. You had to balance all 3 robots on that bridge to get all the bonus points. But the problem is that bridge was a lot shorter than your average 3 robot lengths. So this team built a super, super skinny robot to help, their alliance partners make sure that they can fit on the bridge. They had just a really simple ball intake that literally all it did was pick balls up and spit them out. All it did, but they were able to feed their partners in autonomous. So their partners now got 2 extra balls in autonomous that, all right, this third pick, a lot of your third picks weren't scoring 2 balls in the high goal in autonomous, but this third robot is now giving their first partner 2 more balls to shoot. So you're getting your autonomous bonus. And then 43-34 was incredible defense and incredible at ball stealing. So what they would do is they would park on the other side of the field and they would just pick up the balls that all their opponents were missing and drive over to the center of the field and spit them out to their partners. So they were just stealing all these, game pieces for their partner to score, while simultaneously, taking potential points away from their opponents. It's just super simple, solid strategy that they nailed down to the T. And they ended up making it to Einstein as a rookie team and almost winning. They ended up also winning the Indiana Robotics Invitational, selected 13th overall. A robot that didn't shoot into the high basket was picked in front of 60 teams across the world, where I guarantee you 55 of them could shoot consistently into the high goal. Team picked them 13th overall because this strategy that they developed could win events. And if you're a smart team and you see that, you know that, you're going to pick that team that's going to help you instead of, just throwing another offensive powerhouse into the mix. Another recently new one, 610 in 2013. So I'll talk about 610 individually, and then I'll talk about 610's championship winning alliance, because I think they're both independently very important to talk about as far as developing a good success story. So 610, it's a team from Canada out of Ontario. And if you know FRC, there's two teams in Ontario that perennially usually just stomp their opponents, 1114 to 2056. 610 went into 2013, and they decided that they wanted to build a robot that they thought they could, win an event with. But they didn't take the 1114 or 2056 approach. They took the, we're going to build a super, super simple and super, super effective robot. They built a really simple drivetrain. They built a really simple shooter that didn't pick up off the ground, and they just built a pneumatic hanger. And boy, did they execute this robot. It was running 7 4-disc cycles. Was that week 2 at GSD? Unbelievable amount of points early in the season. Like, this robot was stomping competition. And they could even full court shoot too. So, I mean, this team just had strategies pouring out that could win them matches. They thought about this simple, effective design, and they executed that simple, effective design. They went on to win the world championship.
It was clear, like, you can tell when people put robots on the field for the first time, especially in the early weeks, you can tell which teams have practiced, that they had some hours under them, and which teams are turning the robot on for the first time. And these guys were on the very edge of the bell curve as far as being prepared. Like, they finished that robot a couple weeks into the build season, and we're just driving it for a month before they went out to competition.
They drove circles around their opponents for weeks. It was getting even into week 5, where teams had 4 or 5 weeks of competition season under them, and this team was still out driving almost every single team on the field. So here we're going to look at the 3 teams that won the world championship in 2013. Go back for me a second, Justin. And these 3 teams are all super, super simple robots, very similar ideas. They were all cyclers. They all just went to the human player station, picked up 4 discs, drove across the field, and shot them, instead of picking up off the floor, shooting from the full court, or running super complicated strategies that all 3 other teams on Einstein were running. And these 3 teams that all developed super simple, effective robots came in with a well-orchestrated strategy of them just, moving across the field, and it looked like it was, literally they were just following the paths that they had drawn out. It was so cool to watch, and they rolled through Einstein. It was a tough road. They went to 3 matches in every single one of their elimination sets, but they were able to beat some seriously competitive alliances along the way. So 610, they had what looked to be mediocre results until you get to this one right here. Their simple, effective design won them a world championship. And it's really, you can't really ask for anything more than that, can you? So common themes across all these, quick little case studies that, all 3 of these robots are going from, a low-tier team, a mid-tier team, and a super highly competitive high-tier team. And all 3 of these teams have a lot in common as you look at their success stories. They focused on simplicity and reliability. All 3 of these robots, they had their strategy going into matches. It was a simple strategy. All 3 of them ran through that strategy and executed it to the T almost every single time. They understood how the game worked. They were developing these super simple but effective strategies, and like we said, they were, you know, exceptionally above the rest of the playing field. All the teams utilized Kott's parts. If we go back, I mean, we don't have to. If we were to go back and look at all the pictures that we posted with them, I mean, you could just point out, you know, okay, they bought this part from here, they bought this part from here. You know, they utilized what they had available to them instead of, you know, wasting their time custom making everything. Well driven. These robots, you know, 4334 can promise you they didn't build a practice bot in 2012. But once it got to Einstein, they knew how to drive the robot. They were hitting the practice field at events. They were making sure that, you know, they were executing exactly what they needed to do during their matches, and it becomes muscle memory at that point. You start running the same strategy over 15 times in a course of 3 days, you're going to remember to do that for a long time. So, you know, these robots, these drivers get to know them, and when they execute this practiced strategy, it gets really effective. So just one little quick last group exercise. I'm sure some of you guys are rookies, I think, right? So you may not be able to, you know, run with this one as much as some of the other teams. But let's, you know, sit back, look at, you know, competitions that you guys have been to, and let's, you know, think about, okay, maybe think about, you know, not the team that even won the event, but generate ideas of teams that went to an event, looked like they had a well thought out strategy and were competitive into eliminations with that strategy. And, you know, not only thinking about this team, but why did this team get to this point, and what did they do to build this simple, effective, reliable strategy that made them successful? So we can, you know, jump into that, or we can jump into questions. It's up to you guys. Any preferences? We have 3 minutes. So
Yeah, let's go to the questions.
let's go to questions then, yeah. Any final questions?
Cool, you guys got it then.
Sweet. So Brandon's going to spend the next hour here talking about, if you guys were at this presentation last year, we spent a lot of our time in this presentation talking about how you break down the game. We decided that we wanted to make that a full presentation this year. We wanted to dedicate a full hour to it. So Brandon's going to talk about, in the next hour, about how the neutrons specifically walk into kickoff and build season, and how we break down the game.
So we'll take like a couple minutes, and if you guys want to hit the restroom or whatever, and I'll get the presentation set up and we'll get going.
1 more hour.